That's how we all die.
Like every woman who's indistinguishable from Kathy Griffin and does the Hollywood updates on mid-morning TV, I couldn't stop watching the Johnny Depp case. It was a movie. Until Amber Heard took the stand, and then it turned into an audition for a movie that she, as usual, didn't get.
Johnny, I just want you to hold me. Why won't you look at me? Because of how deeply I've been hurt by you, Amber. And for that, you will never see these eyes again. Oh, Johnny!
He actually said that. Off the cuff. He just naturally speaks like the man in the puffy shirt in a Mills and Boon novel. Take note, aspiring actors. That's why he's had a 40-year career and you're still doing Panadol ads. You're not saying that now, let alone at 52. He's still breaking hearts as a retiree. You'll be shitting yourself at that age like Amber Heard. Everything, all of it. Best movie I've ever seen. Even the supporting cast of The Witnesses, from his bum friend that even had that accent of, yeah, I know, Johnny, who wants to know? To his lawyer, which, honey, why are you a lawyer? Why aren't you playing a lawyer in some show like Law and Order, People Who Think They're Victims Unit? She had us on the edge of our seats asking Amber Heard about facial expressions she pulls, which did need to be addressed. Please, Amber, please, stop pulling that dumb egg face when you're trying to look neutral. That lawyer kept that energy up the whole time. It felt like the climax scene of A Few Good Men, but it lasted 2 weeks. And acting against Amber Heard, who, as usual, killed the moment. Look at her when she's talking to you, Amber. She's trying to connect. What was that looking at the jury stuff? Did you take a page out of your ex's book? You'll never see these eyes again, Camille. You know what else was amazing? That the audio arguments between them are only arguments that massive Hollywood stars could possibly have.
21 Jump Street was terrible. We're really gonna go there? Aquaman, Amber. Aquaman. Aquaman was a tale of redemption. I'll cut your f***ing hand off.
And how half the case was,
Your Honor, I would like to draw attention to just how unfamous Amber Heard is. I mean, no one had even heard of Heard until Aquaman, and even then, I didn't watch Aquaman, did you? Objection, Your Honor. Johnny Depp's last 5 films have been flops. I'll allow it. Did anyone in this courtroom actually watch Aquaman? Mrs. Heard, you're under oath. I rest my case. In that case, I find Johnny Depp guilty of being unbearably talented. Hard to be broody about such a verdict. But I'll find a way.
that was a huge part of the trial. Can Amber Heard even act? And she answered very clearly on the witness stand, where after thousands of hours with some of the world's greatest acting coaches, you'd think she'd be a bit better at selling a dramatic monologue than Arnold Schwarzenegger. Remember her first testimony? It was like sitting through half of the girls' IPs in Year 12 drama with her.
You've never felt love like that. At least that's how it felt. So much. I felt like he recognized me and I recognized him, and there was just something. That was the love of my life.
God, I wish some old gay man in a skivvy came in at that exact moment and said, Amber, stop, honey, stop. What is this adding? As everyone always says about defo cases, it doesn't so much matter if you win or lose in court. What matters is the court of public opinion, and my God, have you seen such a hero of the net since the frog on the unicycle? It also proved why you need juries determining these cases, because when you're arguing if someone's been unfairly damaged in the eyes of the public, shouldn't you be asking the public? I really respect the courts, I really do. I understand that they're a crucial institution of any republic, but it is incredible that judges can say, yes, I can see myself in the shoes of the average Joe Sixpack. If I was down at the local tavern, what would my small talk be? The Smithington vs. Taffy Guild case of 1635, of course. It's very noticeable. People within the court system have been so obviously trained to think in a certain way that they do look at tactics and case sightings of a side that is clearly morally reprehensible and think, yes, that is a clever way of interpreting that particular law. Points to Gryffindor. It's a sport to them, while the average person takes one look at Amber Heard's defense and thinks, no, Johnny Depp is missing a finger. I think the other reason it's enthralled us is that It's just such an encapsulation of our times. It really is. Sorry to sound so Sky Newsy, but cancel culture was put on trial that day. And I think it really highlighted the sick nature of the press. Look at the articles about the trial from all the blue check freaks versus what people, actual people, think. It's the critic review of Amy Schumer's stand-up show versus the audience's opinion all over again. The sheer disconnect these wealthy, friendless nerds have with reality, and yet they're the ones that get to determine reality. The New Yorker stated, "The careful legal vetting of her post-op-ed may be evident in the wording. Heard calls herself a public figure representing abuse, not a victim or a survivor of it. She did not name Depp, nor did she specify a type of abuse." Yes, off the hook. The side that's clearly wrong do this all the time in defo cases, and it angers me deeply. They focus on the wording of a sentence, hundreds of thousands of dollars over arguing about a sentence, and then pretend, regardless of how it was f***ing worded, that Johnny Depp wasn't dropped from Fantastic Beasts because of it. The evil side do this all the time in court. They try to make the argument about the definition of 3 words, pretending like anyone would remember the exact wording of a sentence from 6 years ago, and not the clear overall vibe of it, which I think was pretty well summed up, with Amber Heard putting heaps of blush on her face and appearing on People magazine's front cover. But none of that matters. No, what matters is the sentence. And if the press are on your side culturally, and they clearly are culturally on Amber Heard's side, because they too understand the sting of growing up well off and being told that they could be anything, which their psychiatrist told them is actually a form of abuse, and yet still, even with all those connections, ended up as a writer for Vice. That's their actual Me Too. I wanted to be a movie star, but I also didn't have talent too. That's what I really like about the US court case, that they're televised, because if they're not, you get these pricks getting to interpret what happened behind closed doors and then telling the public that the sentence was the most convincing argument of the day, when if the public can see what was actually said in the context of everything else that happened, it becomes clearly a global laughingstock. As such, can you guess what other cultural tropes these journalists are going to tick off? Social media is evil because people don't think what I want them to think anymore. Yes, of course. It's always the public's fault, isn't it, Vice? Yes, it is Twitter. There's no way if the public took Amber Heard's side that they wouldn't be writing a bunch of articles saying, "Here are the best clapbacks on Johnny Depp so far." They can't reprogram their believe women conditioning by even 1 degree, and as such, look at how insane the people are that weave the narratives of reality. Look at this. She says, this is not a joke, that Johnny Depp's finger being cut off, like he's a tradie apprentice, isn't anywhere near as bad as the fact that he used that severed finger to slut-shame Amber Heard. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how the press worldwide find the most f***ed people with the most infuriatingly dumb views globally. Paris and Phnom Penh. Hi. Look, even the caricature of the journalist who wrote it, "I still love you, Hillary." All of them, all the journos that are defending Heard, you can tell the reason they are is because they're all as fucking mental as Amber Heard is. You can tell they were thinking throughout the trial, yeah, of course I'd shit in someone's bed if I was angry at them. That is, as I love to say on Twitter, totally fine and normal behaviour. How did it get to this? How did it get to the point where the people that are this mentally deficient, like not just dumb, insane. Why is it that it's only them, the only people on earth who want to defend the idea, because that's really what they're defending here, right? They're defending the idea that it's perfectly okay to ruin someone's career who earned it, so you can get a teeny boost in profile from the coverage that will fizzle and die like the guy that killed Apu. That's worth destroying someone's life over. That's worth destroying the life of someone who gave you millions of dollars and the only notable role you've ever had. And they're the ones these outlets hire instead of notifying the nut house. I get it. I get the reason proprietors hire journalists is to make them push their political agendas, but do they also have to be so personally detestable? Does BuzzFeed really have to hire ghouls who write things like, "Why must we torture women before giving them a redemption arc?" She cut his finger off! Literally a form of medieval torture, and yet, nah. The true torture was that anyone was allowed to express their opinions other than those that work at Vice. Yeah? Well, here's my opinion. When he's inevitably rehired for Pirates of the Caribbean 6, they gotta do a scene of, "Pass me that rum first, mate," and "Ow! My finger!
Oh, well, waste not, want not. Let's use the blood to make a map of the treasure. I heard it's encased in amber, and oh no, it's actually encased in poo.
And then obviously.
And so this gets you your 15 minutes of fame, doesn't
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
it? I can ask that question.
Overruled.
Though you're welcome to speculate. I could say the same thing by taking Amber Heard as a client for you.
Unlike any celebrity case, certainly I've ever covered or ever seen, social media was a part of this. And it was incredibly lopsided and vitriolic against Amber Heard. Do you think that had an effect on the case?
Absolutely.
You think jurors were aware of it? They weren't supposed to be. They're admonished every single day. Don't look at it. Do you think they did see it?
How can you not?
It's an orchestrated smear campaign.
You have no evidence of that, do you, Ms. Heard?
Just look me up, you'll see.
You're out of luck.
But Elaine, I think it was bigger than that because you had the evidence, as you say, but they did not believe her. Why do you think they did not believe her?
I think that a lot of that was that it was Johnny Depp. I think the celebrity status.
But she's a celebrity too.
And it's not only not
she's
believing her.
but she's a celebrity too.
Right.
But you have to remember, it's a tale of two trials. All the evidence came in the UK.
Is there any other way to interpret this verdict, though, that this jury, for whatever reason, and I hear you on some of the evidence that they didn't hear, listening to Amber Heard, did not believe a single word?
You know, and that's because she was demonized here. A number of things were allowed in this court that should not have been allowed. And it caused the jury to be confused. We weren't allowed to tell them about the UK judgment. What they learned from the UK case is to demonize Amber, which is what they did, and to try to suppress as much of the evidence that came in the UK and did not come in the United States.
Truth be told, there was a lot of things Elaine tried to bring into evidence and was unable to, and this is one of them. It was called the Brooks versus Depp case, where a location manager alleged he was assaulted by Mr. Depp. Mr. Brooks says he approached an on-site police officer but was confronted by Depp, who he claimed shouted, "Who the F are you? And you have no right to tell me what to do. I don't give a F who you are, and you can't tell me what to do." He then alleges Depp punched him twice in the ribcage. Mr. Brooks claims he managed to keep his composure, to which he says Depp replied, "I will give you $100,000 to punch me in the face right now." Depp's bodyguards are then said to have removed him from the set. That's the general gist of the story that Elaine tried to bring into the Depp versus Heard trial, stating something along the lines of Depp had assaulted somebody before and that there had been a pending case. So here is the case. Greg Rocky Brooks versus John C. Depp et al. On the 7th of the 6th, 2018, Greg Rocky Brooks filed a other personal injury lawsuit against John C. Depp. This case was filed in the Los Angeles County Superior Court. The case is pending. So it is set to go to trial on the 25th of the 7th, 2022. So the 25th of next month. So we might actually cover that one just to see what the story is. But yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of documents involved with this, and I'm probably not going to pay to get all of these documents because there are other people that are doing it and following the case, so we can grab information from them. So the person I am getting this information from is, again, the same person that gave us a good deal of information about the previous case, known as Incredibly Average, or on Twitter, that Brian fella. And thanks to Adam Wolfman's testimony, we know that Brian fella actually does have direct contact with the lawyers, or at least one lawyer, involved with Mr. Depp. Anyway, this case has the same things going against it as the Depp v. Heard case did. And case in point, Emma Danoff. So thanks to the testimony and timestamp photos from Emma, the script supervisor, that's her position, which is a job that requires incredible eye for detail. Anyway, so here's her statement regarding this case. I worked on the film City of Lies, then titled Labyrinth. My job title was script supervisor. My function as a script supervisor includes photographing and monitoring every detail of on-set filming, closely following every detail for verbal and visual consistency and continuity. At 7 p.m. on April the 12th, 2017, I photographed John C. Depp II, Mr. Depp, meeting with homeless individuals who were on the street where the City of Lies filming was taking place. The photograph shows Mr. Depp speaking with a small group of homeless individuals. He gave them money and gifts. We moved outside and were to begin filming our exterior scene at 10:55 p.m. At precisely 11:08 p.m. on the evening of April 12th, per the time clock on the photograph, Mr. Depp was sitting a few inches away from me on a bench looking together at the monitor. His breath did not smell of alcohol, and he was not inebriated or under any influence that I could observe or had observed during a long day of work. Mr. Depp had already been working all day on the film. This was a special day on the set as Christopher Wallace, aka Biggie Small's mother, Violetta Wallace, and Russell Poole's widow and family were visiting the set to watch filming. At that moment, the film's location scout, Rocky Brooks, encountered an African-American homeless woman about 25 feet from where I was sitting with Mr. Depp. Mr. Brooks loudly and aggressively berated the woman with racial and derogatory slurs for being in his presence and in his way, and he was pissed she was unable to follow his commands. I heard most of Mr. Brooks' unkind words to her. Mr. Depp also heard it. He immediately stood up from our shared seat on the edge of a planter bench and went over to Mr. Brooks to stand up for the woman. Mr. Depp said to Mr. Brooks, "You can't talk to her like that. You think she is something less than you? Who do you think you are? How dare you?" Johnny exchanged words with Mr. Brooks in this manner for approximately 20 seconds, as confirmed by my photographs, and then he came and sat back down at 11:09, as confirmed by the time-stamped photograph. There were no punches or shoves. There was no offer of $100,000 to punch Mr. Depp. They were close to each other, but Mr. Depp never touched Mr. Brooks. I remained 10 feet away from the incident during its short duration. I have 40 time-stamped photographs of the entire incident. Later, after filming Wrapped at 12:31 a.m. on April the 13th, April 13th, inside the Barclay Hotel, per a timestamp photograph, I was in the hallway doing post-shoot paperwork. Mr. Depp went up to Mr. Brooks and appeared about 5 feet from me and hugged. Mr. Depp said no hard feelings after Mr. Brooks said what he said was in the heat of the moment. Then they both departed. So there you go. Johnny was defending a homeless extra from Rocky, who was berating the poor woman when Johnny took notice and stepped between them, but never yelled or touched Rocky during their brief interaction. And interestingly, there is evidence, photographic evidence, time-stamped even. And recently, Johnny sat for a deposition. Aside from how calmly and sincerely and confidently he answered the questions and spoke of the interaction, something else caught our attention. During his deposition, Johnny was shown a supposed recitation of what was happening on set that evening. He noticed that 15 minutes before this hoax attempt, there was a report of a very aggressive Rocky Brooks going after someone else. Here is that deposition.
During this time, the monitor spoke with a security officer with Gilmore and Associates. He explained to the monitor that he felt threatened by the location manager. He showed the monitor a video of Rocky, the location manager, flipping him off and aggressively getting in his face. The monitor spoke to Rocky about the altercation and asked him to take a breather. Rocky seemed to back down. There was a lot of tension on the set at this time while the production tried to finish the scene. A lot of moving parts and personality conflicts. Do you remember any of this occurring specifically?
No, I was just reading it, and I thought it was pretty interesting just with regard to 11 p.m. where it says where I stepped in to remind Mr. Brooks that was not proper set etiquette, and that he would. We don't have time for this, you know. And so that's at 11. At 10:45, it shows that he's already, obviously in a aggressive. Says he's flipped somebody off, aggressively getting in his face. And then the guy spoke to him and said to take a breather. I don't think he took a breather.
This isn't describing the woman that you were describing earlier, correct? This is a completely different individual, and as far as you read this?
Calls for speculation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Yeah, it was a lousy question.
No.
We spoke around 11 o'clock. Well, we're looking at the 11 o'clock listing, but we spoke about an incident where Rocky, we're going to call him Rocky, that's Mr. Brooks, was aggressive towards a woman that we believe may have been homeless, and that you intervened in that confrontation that he had had with the woman.
Yes.
But we're now looking at a 10:45 incident that involves Rocky. And as far as you know, does this 10:45 incident involve the same woman?
That
Calls for speculation.
That I don't know about. That seems 10:45 seems like it happened offset to me. It just from the way I read it, it sounds like a separate incident.
And had anyone brought this to your attention prior to you reading it now with me?
No, I was just looking at it. When I sat back down, started reading the 11 p.m., and then I looked up at the 10:45.
Interesting, right? Again, Adam Waldman turns up in this story. So Depp says Rocky asked for a selfie and they hugged it out after the alleged assault occurred. And here's the photo of the actual selfie. And not only do we have the photo of the actual selfie, but we also have a copy of the text where Brooks had sent it to somebody else with the caption, "That's a wrap." That somebody else actually does not know Mr. Depp, but this was sent to the lawyers in this case to show that there was a selfie, and this is the selfie, and it's also got the date and everything attached. Adam Waldman said one more whistleblower who doesn't know Mr. Depp felt compelled to come forward and defend the truth by presenting the photograph and the text exchanges. And then, Judge Fuji, I think his name's pronounced, denied all of Rocky's motions, which were transparent attempts to turn his looming trial into a circus, by citing irrelevancies like Amber Heard's unrelated hoax allegations. Mr. Brooks' motions expose what his lawyers meant when they said they were working with Amber Heard's counsel, Eric George. That's the one that she fired before she scored Elaine. Depp has accused Brooks of working with his ex-wife Amber Heard and trying to use the defamation case Johnny filed against Amber, proof of violent tendencies by Depp in this case. So there you go. That is what Elaine tried to bring in. And of course, most of us will never forget the sly way in which they tried to bring in Johnny's previous domestic history.
I don't hesitate, I don't wait, I just in my head instantly think of Kate Moss and the stairs.
And instead of objecting to it, Johnny's team fist pumped and put Kate Moss on the stand to tell the story, how it actually happened.
And I screamed because I was because I didn't know what had happened to me and I was in pain. And he came running back to help me and carried me to my room and got me medical attention.
Which also led to opening the door to...
They got into an altercation where Ms. Heard had grabbed her traveling companion and pulled something from her neck. At that point, I got up and went over to try to break up what appeared to be a fight. And I summoned a colleague to help me, and I stepped in between them and separated them, stopping any further injuries or escalation.
Amber Heard's domestic violence history. So yeah, I can see why Elaine's a little bit salty how that whole thing backfired on her. Anyway, the witness list looks very interesting, and you'll all be very happy to know that yes, Camille Vasquez is representing Johnny Depp in the Brooks versus Depp case. And once again, Depp has a mountain of evidence to prove his innocence. Let's hope the woman he was defending at the time stands up and testifies on his behalf. Anyway, back to the start. Just as Elaine went to bat for golden glory for her own 15 minutes of fame on all of the media stations that will listen to her, we have it on good authority that she was called urgently into court. So let's hope Judge Penny has something to say about the lies that she's spreading all over the media right now. Let's hope that Elaine's 15 minutes of fame brings about an injunction, because that's the next step for Johnny Depp. An injunction will prevent anybody, Amber or anyone on her team, from continuing to defame Johnny Depp. And personally, I think that's probably why she's doing this whole blitz thing, because she needs to get it all out before the injunction comes down. Anyway, that's all for today.
Follow-up video because so many people have asked whether it's possible to reopen the appeal in the Johnny Depp case in the United Kingdom following the jury verdict in the United States trial. Now, there's one very interesting thing that I'd like to discuss with you in this video. Now, whilst the ordinary route of appeal was exhausted, i.e. permission to appeal was refused, and I've talked about that in great detail in 2 other videos at least by now, there is one interesting aspect which I've only touched on very briefly, and that is the reopening of final appeals, which includes permission to appeal. That is in part 52.30. This provides in the negative, which means it's going to be difficult to overcome, but I have reasons that I'm going to discuss in this video that might make it possible. It reads that the Court of Appeal or the High Court will not reopen a final determination of any appeal, which includes permission to appeal, unless it is necessary to do so in order to avoid real injustice, the circumstances are exceptional and make it appropriate to reopen the appeal, and there is no alternative effective remedy. Now, since so many of you have asked whether it is at all possible, I'm going to shed light on one paragraph of the original judgment, which in my view might provide some fertile ground on exactly this basis. Now, before I go to that section in the judgment, there's a couple of things that I'd like to reference, which I have sort of referenced in passing in my other videos. First of all, the statement that Amber Heard released on Twitter just moments after the verdict reads, "I believe Johnny's attorneys succeeded in getting the jury to overlook the key issue of freedom of speech and ignore evidence that was so conclusive that we won in the UK." Now, as I've said in another video, she didn't win anything. She was not a party to the claim in the UK trial. And I think that's very telling, because when reading the judgment, particularly paragraph 576, it does consider this issue of Amber Heard really being the effective party or the effective defendant in the case. Allow me to explain. At paragraph 576, the judge recites that at several times in the course of this litigation, Mr. Sherborne has suggested that there was unfairness to the claimant because Mr. Depp's effective opponent was Miss Heard, and yet she was not a party. She had no obligation to make disclosure, and she provided information to the defendants at different times and at her choice. I am not persuaded that these comments carry any weight. Pausing there just for a moment and comparing Amber Heard's statement to the wording in the judgment, with all respect and in my personal view, this is a complete contradiction. Amber Heard's statement suggests that she was one of the parties that won the trial in the UK, whereas the judgment is saying that the comments that she was the effective opponent in the case don't carry any weight. Reading on, the judge goes on to say, "It is, of course, right that Miss Heard is not a party to the proceedings. Because she's not a party, she was not obliged to make disclosure. As a third party, the court can, nonetheless, order her to make disclosure, but only if quite stringent conditions are satisfied. And to be fair, this is within the rules. The claimant did indeed apply for such third-party disclosure against Miss Heard. His application was unsuccessful." So let's just pause for a moment and look at the rules that govern third-party disclosure, because this judgment confirms that the application for third-party disclosure against Amber Heard was refused, using the Civil Procedure Rules Part 31.17 in support. So let's take a look at that particular rule so you might be able to understand it. Rule 31.17, which relates to disclosure of a third party, it provides this rule applies where an application is made to the court under any act for disclosure by a person who is not a party to the proceedings, in this case, Amber Heard. 2, the application must be supported by evidence, and doubtless it was. 3, the court may make an order under this rule only where, and then there's a conjunctive A plus B. So A, the documents of which disclosure is sought are likely to support the case of the applicant or adversely affect the case of one of the other parties to the proceeding. In this case, I humbly suggest that if full disclosure of Amber Heard were so ordered, it would adversely affect the case of News Group Newspapers Limited and Dan Wootton as the defendants in this case. And I'm sure it goes without saying, it would have supported the case in favour of the applicant, Johnny Depp. And the second part of this test is B, disclosure is necessary in order to dispose fairly of the claim or to save costs. Now, looking at the judgment as a whole and the concerns that many people, many lawyers, including myself, have over this judgment and the evidence that was considered and that the way decisions were reached, again, I would humbly suggest that disclosure would be necessary in order to dispose of these proceedings fairly. Because at the very least, if there was full disclosure in that case, then these arguments might well have fallen away if that evidence was considered and reasoned decisions were based upon all of the evidence, including that which was not disclosed. Now, going back to paragraph 576 for a moment, and just to recap, it states that the claimant, Johnny Depp, did indeed apply for such third-party disclosure against Amber Heard. His application was unsuccessful. Mr. Depp had not been short of legal advice. He would, I can assume, have been advised of the consequences of suing the defendants against whom the claim is brought, but not Amber Heard. It was a matter for him, with the benefit of that advice, to decide if he wished to pursue the claim against these defendants. The consequences of him doing so are that they, not Miss Heard, are subject to the obligations of a party to make disclosure. There has been no suggestion that the defendants have failed in that duty. Now, as I said in the previous video, I am not a judge, but I am a practicing barrister, and I can interpret this paragraph of the judgment. And in my view, in this paragraph, the judge is saying that Johnny Depp would have taken advice as to the consequences of suing these defendants when Amber Heard was not subject to the same obligations for disclosure. In other words, the defendants had obligations of disclosure, but Amber Heard didn't. And Johnny Depp's application for third-party disclosure against Amber Heard was refused. Now, Rule 52.30 of the Civil Procedure Rules is a rarity. This is extremely rare for the court to open up an appeal or permission to appeal, but there was one such case in 2019. And without boring you with the details, it ultimately came down to a document not being before the court that the court should have had in order to decide the case. So going back to that test for a moment in 52.30, A, it's necessary to avoid a real injustice. Pause. I think this now is necessary to avoid a real injustice because a jury has decided it in full open court where the claim was against Amber Heard. B, the circumstances are exceptional and make it appropriate to reopen the appeal. Pause. I think these circumstances are exceptional. We've effectively had the same trial, albeit different defendants, in two different countries, and the latter being decided by a jury against the person who is the real second subject of this claim other than Johnny Depp. And third and finally, that there is no alternative effective remedy. Well, there is no other remedy. If this case is dead effectively in the UK because permission to appeal was refused, there is no remedy at all. Those articles were published and the damage was done. There has been no remedy because the judge ruled against Johnny Depp, and there's been no appeal because permission to appeal was refused. In my humble interpretation of the rules, this qualifies under Part 52.30 of the Civil Procedure Rules as being necessary to avoid real injustice, an exceptional case which makes it appropriate to reopen the appeal, and there's no alternative remedy. So I hope you find these snippets of analysis useful and interesting. Please do like the video, save it and share it with somebody. I would very much like these videos to reach a much more worldwide audience. I know there's a lot of people interested in this around the world. So